Dear colleagues, we would like you to ask to take places so we could start our meeting. Thank you so much. My name is Gulnara Rol. I am head of the Secretariat of the Global Alliance Building and Construction and head of the Cities Unit at the United Nations Environment Programme. It's our pleasure to start this meeting. It is my great honor to give floor for the opening to Inger Andersen, United Nations Environment Programme Executive Director.
Thank you very much, and distinguished ministers present here and other distinguished participants, many, many thanks for this opportunity, and my thanks to Azerbaijan and the State Committee for Urban Planning and Architecture for organizing this event. This is a ministerial roundtable, and of course, focusing on green construction and focusing on energy efficiency and in buildings and climate resilience. That's a topic that's very important as we are heading towards a world where 75% of the world's population will live in urban agglomeration. And so understanding, therefore, that that matters, we were particularly delighted to see that in Paris in 2024, the world came together under the Déclaration de Chaillot and met to agree on establishing an intergovernmental council for buildings and climate. And here I want to celebrate the work that was done at the previous COP under the United Arab Emirates leadership in this exact topic. Because when we understand that right now our climate trajectory is going in the wrong direction, it becomes a point of reflection. We need to accept that the 2023 increase GHG emissions went up, not down, went up by 1.3%. That is at a time when we need to take it in a very direct downward trend. Right now, as we are heading towards the end of 2030, we have to understand that we need to reduce our emissions by 41% between now and 2030 if we are to remain below 1.5 degrees. That's 41% between now and 2030. If we want to aim for 2 degrees, which I suggest to you we really don't, then we have to reduce by 28%. It's basic physics, and so we can't really argue with it. We emit 57 gigatons a year into the atmosphere, and we have 200 left if we are not to bypass 1.5. So the task before us, therefore, is to take every action that we can, and here the building and construction sector is very important because that contributes 21% to the greenhouse gas emissions. And 2/3 of these occur in the residential sector, where we live, where we exist. And so we have some job to do. We need to think about the established stock of housing and infrastructure, where we have to think about retrofitting that to be more climate, to have lower reductions. And of course, since we built the footprint that is equivalent of 1 Paris a week in this planet, we need to think about that 1 Paris a week of new footprint that we put down and ensure that that is within a climate dimension and proper regulations. And that's why I sometimes wonder why it is that you can never build a building without adhering to the fire code. You can never build a building that doesn't have an escape route should there be a catastrophic fire. Why is it that we cannot get building regulations in place that will ensure passive cooling, that will ensure high energy efficiency, be it heat or cold? Why is it that only 49 countries have set minimum standards for cooling equipment, for example? There is a lot of work to be done here. And so as we now know that we have to complete these NDCs by February next year, and as I just mentioned, that we need to reduce our emissions by 41% to stay below 1.5 degrees, 28% if we want to hit 2 degrees, then the chance for this sector is very, very big. This sector that sits with, as I mentioned, 21% of all emissions. Yes, we need to tackle energy. Yes, we need to tackle transport, but building and construction comes in as a third largest emitter, and of course, followed by then agriculture and finance. So the NDCs then, and we were pleased as UNEP to host regional forum to support regional fora to support regions across Africa, Eastern Europe, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and Middle East, North Africa during August, September, October to help those countries how to prepare these NDCs. Those NDCs, we have to make a step up from the NDCs that we submitted in Glasgow. In Glasgow, just 18% of our NDCs had quantifiable targets for mitigation objectives in the building and construction sector. We can surely do better this time round. And so looking at that then, I just want to say that the Intergovernmental Council on Buildings and Climate, which has its inaugural meeting today, and of course the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, some members I see present here that are part of the alliance, we from UNEP will continue to support these two bodies with the secretariat support that we provide and with the substance support that we provide in terms of science and policy. These bodies, the Council, of course, working with governments, and the ABC, the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, working with private sector, civil society, research organization, as well as intergovernmental organization, will work together so that we can ensure that new building and construction that we will put down new footprint for has the right parameters to be energy efficient and resilient. And of course, so that we can retrofit that which we have already put down. We need to ensure also that as we prepare our national adaptation plans, that we understand where we build and where we don't build. Let us be sure that in low-lying areas that are likely prone to flooding are rezoned where we can to ensure that they will not be in danger zone. Let us be sure that in cities where we have tended to dam in rivers or bulk in rivers in concrete channels, that we give them the chance where we can to overflow their banks. That is the way that we can keep our housing stock safe. That is the way that we can ensure that we both have resilience as well as mitigation baked in to the housing sector, because one thing is sure, we are urbanizing, we are agglomerating. Let's do it smartly, and let's make sure that we reflect that in our NDCs 3.0. Thank you for being here today. I understand that the minister is still in the meeting, in the negotiations, but I'm sure he will be coming. But from our side at UNEP, we're very, very grateful for your participation and for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Inger, for these inspiring remarks and also framing the discussion and reminding us that the building construction sector has such a big impact on the climate, being the third in terms of greenhouse emissions, as also emissions, UNEP emissions gap report demonstrated. So this high-level roundtable, organized as a third ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change, on this very important Urbanization, Transport and Tourism Day. And it will be focusing today on transforming ambition into action in the building and construction sector across countries and also cities and regions. And we'll be looking at the approaches on the multi-level action and the whole of society approach. We'll be also discussing the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, also with a view of the engagement of the subnational actors. Just 2 days ago, at the COP29 Buildings and Cooling Pavilion here, the Global Alliance Building and Construction and the Partnership for Energy Efficiency in Buildings launched a new report, NDCs for Buildings, how to make them ambitious, investable, actionable, and inclusive. This report is based on the UNEP's and Global ABC engagement in many countries, in many cities across the globe, and it underscores the essential message. The built environment, often so named a sleeping giant of climate action, must be at the forefront of the country's next round of submission of the NDCs, also known as the NDCs 3.0. And anchoring the buildings in the upcoming NDCs 3.0 submissions really offers a powerful opportunity for us to prioritize the building sector with the national climate plans and also with national adaptation plans, aligning ambition with a very practical implementation and financing. And through this week, 10 days, we saw really many examples of how countries and cities are implementing these ambitions. I'm very pleased to open a panel discussion on the role of the nationally determined contributions as a lever for building and construction decarbonization and strengthening climate resilience. And it's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Parliamentary State Secretary Stefan Wenzel at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Actions, and invite him to share with us his views on what role does the international collaboration plays in achieving the NDC 3.0 goals, especially in adopting resilient and net zero building. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gulnara Roll. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, excellencies, thank you for this question. Before I respond, I would like to welcome the policy brief that was launched. It's a helpful guide on huge mitigation potential of the building sector and how our NDCs can shape an effective enabling environment for the transformation of this whole sector. With regard to your question, I fully agree on the need to enhance efforts to adopt resilient and net zero building practices and to embed this in policies, including the NDCs. At last year's at COP28 in Dubai, we agreed to triple renewable, double efficiency, and transition away from fossil fuels. This was a really huge milestone of the presidency and all members of the IPCC. Now we need to show that we are moving forward on implementation of these goals, and the building sector is crucial for this. New buildings need to be constructed with climate-neutral building materials. For example, wood or clay or others. Circularity and the recycling of building materials is also crucial. Even low-carbon cement is an option we have in sight now. Fossil fuel-powered heating and cooling needs to transition to technologies that can be powered by renewable energy sources, for example, such as heat pumps or district heating or cooling. Energy efficiency of new and existing buildings need to be accelerated. They need to become zero or nearly zero emissions building. And these efforts will also help us reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and make our renewable energy system more resilient. How can we catalyzing the implementation? Within the European Union, we are planning to present a new NDC in time for COP30 in Belém. So regarding your question on the international collaboration needed to achieve our NDC, this is a collaborative effort of 27 EU countries requiring a joint effort for more ambition. The new European NDC will also require more significant efforts from the building sector and will lead to a strengthening of the policy framework for buildings, which, for example, includes the Energy Efficiency Directive and a renewed Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. These policies will also be mirrored in the EU NDC. And the EU legislation will be complemented by national level policies. For example, we are working on an ambitious Building Energy Act and public funding scheme to construction, away from new construction to retrofitting of buildings. And I would like to emphasize that such changes are not just important for our climate. They are also a social and economic imperative. For example, we often hear that energy-efficient retrofits are too costly for homeowners and contribute to increases in rental costs. But we need to ensure that climate-friendly housing is also affordable. But we must also recognize that a lack of energy efficiency retrofits can be even more costly as building inhabitants face higher energy bills. Moreover, there is a risk that buildings that aren't built or retrofitted to be climate-proof in time will become stranded assets. I also want to point out that the transition of the building sector has significant potential for job creation. And therefore, it's very important to collaborate, and we're working together in the Partnership for Energy Efficiency of Buildings. We're working with co-founding guide of the PEPB, and so I hope we come up with all these points together. That is a joint effort we can make if we work together on these items.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wenzel, for this very rich presentation, and we're really very grateful for working together. We're very glad that Anar Guliev, who is the chairman of the State Committee of Planning and Architecture, arrived. So thank you so much, and we would like to get back to the opening remark of Mr. Guliev.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor to extend my warmest greetings to all of you here today in Baku. On behalf of State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture of the Republic of Azerbaijan, I welcome you to this pivotal roundtable on green construction, energy efficiency buildings, and the climate crisis in cities. As we confront the accelerating challenges posed by climate change, we must also recognize the transformative role that the construction sector can play, not only in shaping the built environment, but also in driving sustainable urban development and economic growth. The construction industry is a cornerstone of our economic development. It provides infrastructure, housing, and urban spaces that sustain and elevate our societies. However, we must also acknowledge that the sector is one of the largest contributors to global carbon emissions, resource depletion, and environmental degradation. In Azerbaijan, as in many parts of the world, the construction industry has long been a powerful engine of economic growth. It has created jobs, stimulated innovation, and significantly contributed to improving the quality of life for our citizens. Yet with this growth comes an immense responsibility to reduce the environmental impact of our buildings and infrastructure. Today, the growing urgency of climate change calls for a fundamental shift in how we build and manage our cities. We must adopt greener, more sustainable construction practices and prioritize energy efficiency in buildings. In this context, I am pleased to announce our ongoing collaboration with IFC to develop a green building roadmap for Azerbaijan. This roadmap represents a critical step in integrating sustainability into our urban development processes. It will outline practical, actionable strategies for adopting green building standards, energy-efficient construction practices, and the use of environmentally responsible building materials. Additionally, the roadmap will offer guidance for both public and private sector stakeholders on aligning Azerbaijan's urban construction efforts with global sustainability objectives. As part of our commitment to sustainable urban development, Azerbaijan is also embracing digitalization within the construction sector. A key initiative in this regard is the introduction of a single window for construction permits to streamline and modernize the permitting process. We introduced Building Information Modeling, BIM, which facilitates more efficient, transparent planning, construction, and operation of buildings. Furthermore, Azerbaijan is increasingly promoting the installation of solar panels and other green technologies to reduce energy consumption in buildings. This is part of our broader strategy to create a built environment that not only reduces emissions, but also enhance the quality of life for our citizens. Today, we are pleased to see here the lead private companies who have signed a pledge for the greener construction and committed to reducing the footprint from the sector via the innovative solutions. While the private sector plays a crucial role in advancing green construction, the role of government is just as vital in providing the necessary strategies, standards, and policies. Azerbaijan's approach emphasizes creating and enabling environment for the private sector to actively contribute to sustainable construction efforts. A key component of this strategy is the promotion of public-private partnerships, particularly in the areas where the urban renewal and reconstruction are critical, such as in our deoccupied post-conflict territories. Through the PPP model, we aim to achieve large-scale urban regeneration while addressing the climate challenges we face. The involvement of the private sector is essential for the successful implementation of these policies. I believe that MAP, Multi-Sectoral Actions Pathways for Resilient and Healthy Cities Declaration, launched today by the ministerial meeting and established Baku Continuity Coalition earlier this morning, will serve as a platform enabling us to review the progress. So with this good synergy of start, we will also forge a complete action in some time from now, next COPs and WUFs, in particular COP30 in 2025 in Brazil and WUF 13 in 2026 in Baku. While we are talking about the urbanization and climate, it is not a connotation of crisis or challenges, but green development and better urban life. I wish you all a productive and insightful discussion ahead, and I trust that your time in Baku will be both enjoyable and fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Anar Guliyev, for the speech. So now we will return to our panel discussions on the national determined contribution, and following the intervention of Mr. Wenzel, it is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Ahmed Mohamed bin Sani, Director General of Dubai Environment and Climate Change Authority of the UAE, to share experiences of Dubai with NDCs. We know that UAE latest NDCs launched at COP29 stand out as a sector-focused, multi-level approach with very clear targets across multiple domains. Could you please share with us what action Dubai is taking to deliver on the national government commitments? The floor is yours.
Thank you for your question. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by highlighting that the UAE has a strong model of collaboration based on dialogue between the national and the local level. This process was applied when developing and updating NDCs. As part of the journey, each emirate communicates the action it is taking to deliver climate action, and this is then reflected into the NDCs. In Dubai, we developed our first carbon abatement strategy in 2015 and have been updated with an outlook for 2030. This was also developed through strong cooperation with the various local authorities overseeing the key sector responsible for our emission. This includes the Electricity and Water Authority, the Road and Transport Authority, the municipality, our ports and aviation authorities, as well as key industries. By default, our carbon mitigation plan includes action in these various sectors. To mention a couple, we have a 2050 clean energy plan, which aims to have 75% of all of the Emirates' energy from a clean source by 2050. We have also a demand-side management program which aims to reduce energy and water demand by 30% by 2030. This is a key step to achieving our 2050 net zero targets. As part of this program, we have set a target to retrofit over 30,000 buildings by 2030. We have retrofit around 10,000 buildings so far. To complement these efforts, we also have a green building code, which we update regularly in an effort to improve the efficiency and reduce the carbon footprint of the building sector. I just want to end by saying that it is a journey, and we keep increasing both our ambition and actions at every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very important example of how Dubai is introducing its objectives into the national NDCs. And the last in this panel, it is my pleasure to give floor to Kennedy Mateka, who is the Deputy Director at the Ministry of Land, Public Works, Housing, Urban Development in Kenya, and ask you, Kennedy, what steps are being taken by your ministry to ensure that Kenya's NDCs for the building sector are investable and attract both domestic and international finance? Please.
Thank you, His Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are all aware and privy to the basis upon which nationally determined contributions are made from. We have global commitments that informs policy decisions at a country level. And therefore, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we know best how NDCs shape our sectors. Building sector is not exceptional. If you look at our submissions as nations, we have clear pathway upon which building and construction sector has to take. This is coming from each and every of the member states' commitment under the NDC. And therefore, Kenya is not exceptional into this conversation. Within our updated NDC submitted in the year 2020, we have deliberate efforts in the NDC to mainstream and ensure that the building and construction sector become resilient as much as possible. And to this extent, the NDCs have really shaped our policy interventions, moving forward with a view of ensuring that we mainstream and have every stakeholder, every person so required, from the grassroots level, at a community level, all the way to the policymakers. And therefore, it has been our deliberate effort as well to ensure that we have programs that incentivize the whole process. All this is arising from the global commitments under the NDC, and we'll be keen to see how best, as we also further our policies, then we bring and have everyone on board. Building code is a key instrument that delivers the NDC commitment in the building sector. As a country, we did update our building code and launched this in July this year. We are keen on implementing this new building code come March 2025, and we'll be calling each and every one of you to be part of the journey of moving and implementing the National Building Code for Kenya. Equally, we are keen on coming up with policies that support investment. A specific intervention as a country that we have that is aligned to the NDC commitment is green incentive policy. Within that very policy, which was approved earlier this year, we have made deliberate efforts to see how best the building and construction sector can be incentivized, including the use of sustainable building materials, specifically on the use of and adoption of up to 40% recyclable contents in various building and construction processes and projects. And therefore, it's very important for us as we have this conversation, we see and understand that policies play a very key role in the whole of conversation relating to how countries can mainstream the NDCs into their business, especially within the building and construction sector. We're all further aware that issues around finance is very key. Kenya has been and is continuing to explore various mechanisms on seeing how best we can mobilize resources locally and internationally to ensure government priority programs and projects, including the affordable housing and various sustainable urban development and renewal projects, are therefore resilient and climate-proofed in a manner so required under the NDC commitment. And therefore, we are keen to ensure that various finance mechanisms have been employed, including PPP arrangements, to see how best we can have even the engagement of our private sector into the conversation of mainstreaming principles around nationally determined contributions. There is need for us to understand the need to have investor confidence. And this can only come in when you have a system, when you have a country, when you have a processes that are well built to the level that is so required. As a country, we have made deliberate efforts around capacity building to see how best our professionals, our stakeholders, our key players move together with us as government. And therefore, we are also calling further an opportunity for the country to have each and every one of you find it necessary to come to Kenya, see the investment opportunity in the name of building our professionals, in the name of building our contractors, so that as we realize sustainable building and construction sector, then we are walking this journey all together. And therefore, that calls for us to move with speed, not just in Kenya, but even each and every one of us, see how best we can create synergy and collaboration to see that we realize the best out of the NDCs that we all committed into. Finally, I believe we all have a higher responsibility to attract and work together, create that sort of synergy that is required, and that is how our building and construction sector can realize our NDC commitments at a country level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mateka, for highlighting how important the enabling environment for the investors and private sector to come. And this is very timely. We're going to the next panel, which will be moderated by Roland Hunziker, who is Director of the Built Environment at the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, and he's a co-chair of the steering committee of the Global Alliance Building and Construction. So, Roland, it's with you.
Thank you very much, Gulnara, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. World Business Council, we work with a lot of global companies that are committed to the net zero transition, and many of them are active in the built environment. We're very happy to be co-chairing the Global ABC and have seen the emergence of the ICBC, Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate, because we are committed, but we can only do it together. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. Buildings are almost 40% of global CO2, and hence they are 40% of the solution. But as we heard yesterday in the presentation of the Buildings Global Status Report, we are not on track to decarbonize. We have just about managed to stabilize emissions globally. So the good news is they're not going up anymore, but we need to bring them down. Now, we do have the technologies, we have the solutions and the knowledge to decarbonize, but we need to apply them in a systematic way, focusing on the common and shared goal in every single building project to reduce the operational energy use and the emissions, and also reduce the emissions from the construction materials. We call this systematic focus on a common goal market transformation. This mobilizes businesses from all along the value chain to achieve that common goal of halving emissions by 2030 and achieving full decarbonization by 2050. And market transformation focuses on three things that we can all focus on. It's looking at all emissions from building projects. We call that whole life carbon. It's a currency, if you want. It's a measurement. We don't need the perfect data, but we need to look at all the emissions and account for them. And then we need to put that information on carbon next to cost, because we don't build without knowing the cost, but we still build without knowing the carbon. Now, you don't have to put a carbon price on that. You don't have to do that. But just putting the information next to the cost, it is transformational. Companies who do that, they change the way they take decisions. And carbon is cost, so it is also beneficial from a business side. And then ultimately, this transforms supply and demand, because if we focus on these carbon reductions across the whole life cycle, we're actually pulling in the technologies and the solutions that can help us achieve that. So it's a holistic approach that engages everybody. Now, with the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, we work with all stakeholders, from business, from finance, national and local government, to achieve this transformation together. It is now my great pleasure to moderate a short panel with private sector and finance perspectives. And before we move to the panel discussion, I very much welcome our high-level champion for COP29, Nigar Appardarai. Thank you for being with us. And you have a very exciting announcement to make about the Azerbaijani blueprint for the built environment. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's such a great honor to be here today, represent COP29 presidency and as UN climate change high-level champion for COP29. Ladies and gentlemen, the effects of climate change will reach every corner of the world. Our buildings and built environment have a critical role to play. Buildings impact everyone, everywhere. They protect us from rising temperatures, storms, and floods. They provide 40% of the solutions we need to double energy efficiency improvements, and yet they are responsible for a fifth of global emissions. The sector is not on track to meet the Paris Agreement goals. In developed countries where the most buildings have already been built, retrofitting rates remain well off track. And in developing countries where most of new buildings will be constructed, more can be done to ensure buildings are efficient and affordable by design. But climate action on buildings is not only cost, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to save money, an opportunity to improve health, and opportunity to create jobs. Addressing climate change is not just a government issue, but a shared challenge that requires our collective commitment, capabilities, and collaboration across the entire real-world economy. This transition is not possible without non-state actors. And these actors are already leading the way to seize this opportunity. From day one, when we started, I was very much supportive of the idea of bringing private sector to the table. And today, I'm so happy to see that we have all the sectors joining this process, and the construction sector being one of the biggest ones in that. This year we have, in Baku, we hosted first Sustainable Built Environment Leadership Roundtable, a gathering where construction leaders signed a landmark declaration by heads of leading construction companies operating in Azerbaijan. This pledge symbolizes a collective recognition of the industry's responsibility to reduce emissions and serves as the first step in a broader transition from commitment to action. Since then, a working group has formed to understand the collective challenges faced in decarbonizing Azerbaijan's built environment industry and the wealth of opportunities it offers. That is why we are delighted to be here today. I am delighted to be here today to launch the Azerbaijan Sustainable Built Environment Blueprint. This paper represents a blueprint for the future, a future where radical collaboration drives systemic change. While the challenges facing our construction sector, such as limited technical capacity and the need for stronger regulatory network, are significant, the opportunities are vast. We would like to see the opportunities there. By taking shared vision, action, we can foster growth, create jobs, improve public health, and reduce energy bills. This paper lays out how we can start to move from commitments to meaningful action. As we look ahead to COP30, I look forward to seeing how our built environment leaders deliver on this pledge and create real momentum for progress. We urge all those involved to lean in to the radical collaboration being demonstrated and for others to be inspired by this work so that we can continue to catalyze regional action in buildings and construction sectors. Time is short. Let us seize the opportunity to do the right thing by future generations. The goal may be ambitious and challenging, but rest assured that non-state actors are already showing us it is possible, profitable, and popular. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nigar, also for your personal leadership as high-level champion and for introducing us to this exciting blueprint for the future. It's the future we built, and that is really great to hear. Thanks. With that, it is now my pleasure to introduce our panel of private sector and finance sector speakers. I don't know if we can bring them up on the slide. You will anyway have an opportunity to briefly introduce yourself, so I will not go now through all the names, but I would love to start with you, Rama Dunajevic. You're the Global Impact Lead for Autodesk, global software development company. What is Autodesk's role in the decarbonization of buildings, and how do you enable a more sustainable construction globally?
Thank you, Roland, and UNEP for the invitation to be part of this We feel it's really important. So first I want to start off by
You
explaining
need to move a bit closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
You know, I lifted my chair. So Autodesk is a 3D design and make software company. Designers, engineers, builders, and creators trust us to help them design and make anything. Think about the buildings we live and work in, the cars and bridges we drive on, the products we use every day, and even the movies and games that inspire us. Autodesk plays a key part in all of these. Our platform unlocks the power of data, helping to accelerate insights and automate processes. This technology empowers our millions of customers to create the world around us and achieve better outcomes for their businesses and for the planet. As the premier technology partner and provider for designing and making the built environment, Autodesk has a responsibility and an opportunity to help decarbonize the built environment. And we believe that technology plays a crucial role in the creation of our low-carbon future. In fact, it's the only cost-effective and efficient tool to measure and manage greenhouse gas emissions. At Autodesk, we support the built environment by providing powerful tools that enhance productivity and enable valuable insights. We know that a significant amount of building products' embodied carbon is locked in at the conceptual phase. That's why we deliver the necessary insights early in the design process to highlight the carbon impact of design decisions. Autodesk has the power to break down silos and connect every stage of a project, from design and build through operation, helping to create a more sustainable future. We support green building by enabling our customers to design high-performance, energy-efficient buildings with lower embodied carbon footprints. This not only reduces the environmental impact of buildings, but also has a positive knock-on effect for the financing of those buildings. By enabling our customers to build more sustainably, we are bringing more transparency to the process of project delivery, and thus ensuring that risks like climate change can be ameliorated through the design process. Thus, the most important thing for architecture, engineering, construction, and asset management industries to do is to incorporate digital tools that illuminate what the whole life carbon of a building or asset is at every stage of the project, and then subsequently remove these silos to ensure what gets designed is what gets built, and validate the performance of projects based on real-time assessment. We can now design a sustainable building, ensure that the design is built to the appropriate sustainable specifications through the construction process, and then the owner-operator can ensure that the building is performing to those specifications based on real-time utility and utilization data. Only once we've realized this vision can we fully decarbonize the built environment.
Thank you very much, Rama, and thank you to Autodesk for being such a strong collaborator together with other companies to drive this transparency and be that enabler. Thank you very much. I have received a signal on time. If I may ask the remaining panelists, if you can just shorten somewhere, that will be highly appreciated. But we want to make sure you can get your key points across. Diep Nguyen van Hout, it is now my great pleasure to turn over to you. IFC has already been mentioned. You're working with Azerbaijan. You're also, to me, an example of market transformation. That is really how you are engaging in many emerging markets. So over to you.
Thank you, Roland. Good morning, everyone. I am the Senior Manager of Climate Business at the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector lending arm of the World Bank Group. We've all heard that the buildings and construction sector contributes to 40% of global energy-related emissions, with the floor area of global building sector expected to double by 2060. The equivalent of adding a city the size of New York to the globe every month for the next 40 years. Yet only 6% of the existing building stock is currently meeting renewable energy standards, and less than 1% are certified as zero carbon. To just give you an idea of the work we have ahead, every building on the planet must be net zero carbon by 2050 in order to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. Yet at the same time, the green construction transition represents a $1.5 trillion investment opportunity. And so the question for all of us is, how do we facilitate the private sector to invest in emerging markets? At IFC, we have developed the EDGE Green Building Certification System to help galvanize the private sector to invest in green and resilient buildings, including zero carbon buildings. Since 2015, our EDGE Global Certification System has facilitated investments of $94 billion so far in green buildings in over 110 countries, including $16 billion of IFC's own investments and mobilization. We joined the UN's Building Breakthrough Initiative at COP28 in Dubai and supported subsequent meetings in Paris to facilitate countries to commit to zero carbon and resilient buildings to become the norm by 2030. And this past March, 70 countries signed up to this agreement. IFC is happy to support Azerbaijan's State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture to lead this transition with development of the Green Building Roadmap. This work will be further developed and presented at COP30 next year. We're thankful to the State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture for their leadership and continuing support to financial institutions and companies aiming for zero carbon and resilient assets. We commend governments so far, many governments that we worked with, including the government of Kenya, governments of Peru, Colombia, Vietnam, South Africa, so many countries around the world that we have worked with to develop a green building code that incentivizes green building. And with that, I conclude and thank all of you and encourage all of you to come to us if you need support for changing your, for reforming your building code to facilitate net zero and green building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diep. Thank you for IFC's leadership and your triple approach on private sector financing as well as the policy support you provide. It is now my pleasure to turn to you, Thomas Eriksson, your Director of the Department of the Eastern Europe, Central Asia and Middle East region for the Green Climate Fund. How is the GCF working to bridge the financing gap for green and climate resilient buildings? What innovative partnerships with the private sector have shown the greatest potential for mobilizing additional green capital?
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to address all of you today. Green and climate resilient buildings and related climate resilience investments are top priorities for the GCF. Since 2010, we have invested about $2 billion across 49 projects and countries to advance sustainable urban development and resilient infrastructure, contributing to both mitigation and adaptation. We have heard that buildings are key to achieving the 1.5-degree target. We heard a lot of key stats. I won't repeat them, but I will add two. Energy efficient designs, clean energy integration, and sustainable construction can cut urban emissions significantly. Potential savings about 33 to 37% we have estimated. Low emission building codes, the use of local, low carbon materials can reduce temperatures, slash energy demand, and lower carbon emissions by over 3.3 gigatons annually. Now, what are we doing at the GCF? Project financing. Green buildings, energy efficiency, urban development, sustainable transport, climate resilient infrastructure, and incorporating resilient design principles and materials that can withstand extreme weather events in developing countries. Private sector partnerships. We mobilize investments, foster public-private collaborations, and as an example, we were one of the first initial investors into the Green Guarantee Company coming after me on the panel here. Innovative financial tools. Grants, loans, equity, guarantees to de-risk investments and to attract private capital. But also importantly, capacity building and an enabling environment at the country level. Enhancing skills, sharing knowledge to enable sustainable practices, supporting climate-aligned building codes, norms and standards, and the regulatory frameworks, and integrating the sector into national plans, the NDCs and the NAPs. The private sector clearly plays a pivotal role by offering, from our side, concessional financing, equity investments, and guarantees, we help unlock this private capital to enable innovations in developing countries. I'll do 3 very short examples. By working with financial institutions and funds, we enable investments into certain climate-smart technologies to be commercially viable and to reach developing country markets. Typically, we would do this by providing first loss capital, as I mentioned earlier, or guarantees to green portfolios. 2, we of course work in general to de-risk investments into green buildings and energy efficiency opportunities. And 3, we invest equity directly into early stage companies and funds that provide or pilot energy efficient technologies. To conclude, looking forward, we look forward very much from GCF side to partner with all of you to help finance transformative projects in developing countries. In addition, I would like to reiterate my point on the NDCs and maps. I think it's very important that all of us looking ahead integrate this sector very much into this work, both from a mitigation and adaptation perspective. With that, I look forward to working together with all of you towards a greener and more resilient future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for these perspectives. And the critical role of de-risking is also a topic that Lasita, you will certainly talk about. Lasita Pereira, you are the CEO of the Green Guarantee Company. So please tell us more about what role can green guarantees play in de-risking investments for sustainable building projects? And how can these instruments be further adapted to attract a wider range of private sector investors? Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Roland. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be able to talk to you here today. Maybe to start with a little bit of context. There is over $100 trillion sitting in global capital markets. That makes the climate finance gap a single-digit percentage against that number. And there is the ability, therefore, to actually finance the projects that we need to address the climate gap. The role of the Green Guarantee Company is to address one of the key challenges to accessing that $100 trillion, which is effectively a psychological barrier. It is that the perception of risk is higher than the actual risk on the ground. And this is what we exist to try and address through the fact that our guarantees are investment grade, whereas a lot of the projects that need to be financed are, for whatever reason, be it geography, sector, or technology, considered not to be investment grade. However, there is data from agencies like Moody's, these rating agencies, that demonstrate that actually, in reality, the actual risk of these projects is no greater than projects that already exist and have historically been financed by these global capital markets. So how do we bring this together and actually address the psychological barrier? One is through providing our guarantee, which effectively guarantees the payment of these projects should they be unable to pay for whatever reason. And the other is actually through an assurance that these projects are indeed green. And that, frankly, is where we need the support of all of you and the actors around in the construction sector to come together and help us create that level of assurance through building codes, through the work that IFC is doing through standards like IFC Edge, and propagating that across the construction sector. The Green Guarantee Company, as Thomas mentioned, was created by the Green Climate Fund alongside the United Kingdom, the United States, Norway, and the government of Nigeria. It is a global North-Global-South partnership, and we are seeking to bring in the private sector and work with the private sector to address the climate finance challenges that exist. However, a guarantee cannot make a bad project a good project. It ultimately needs to be a good project to begin with. And again, that is where we need the support of all of you to come together and to build this pipeline of good projects by addressing them and creating global standards that the global capital markets can get behind and be comfortable with. Investors need confidence, not just on the risk of payment, but also, as I said earlier, on the risk that what they are actually supporting will make the difference and address the climate change challenges that we are facing. I'm going to finish with one very important point, which is that in developed markets, the construction sector underpins the global capital markets. However, that is not true in all markets. To give you an example, in Nigeria, with a country with a population of over 200 million, there is less than 50,000 mortgages. This has to be addressed. There needs to be financial system change as well. But what's fundamental to take away from this is that while the construction sector needs finance, finance also needs the construction sector. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lasita, for these points, and especially that last one. Finance needs also the construction sector. I hope you will stay around, because many of us will certainly have more questions on your model. So thank you very much for that. Last but not least, Adam, I'd like to also introduce you. Adam Matthews, you're Head of Strategy and Engagement, or Head of Digital Construction, actually, at Catapult UK. Public procurement. How is the encouragement of innovative digital solutions by public procurement requirements helping to de-risk delivery and financial investment in sustainable infrastructure development in low and middle income countries? Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Roland. Good afternoon, everybody, and Your Excellencies, very privileged to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I will actually follow on from Lasita's last point about de-risking investment, and in particular from the perspective of the investor. So our focus has been on building investor confidence by de-risking project delivery, infrastructure project delivery, specifically sustainable infrastructure itself. We're a government-to-government technical assistance program. Essentially, we work with low to middle income countries primarily to support the mainstreaming of digitalization, which is an incredibly important topic. I've shortened my points for you in light of your remarks, so I'm going to just focus on a couple of those points in particular. I would like to focus on transparency, actually. I think transparency is a really important idea because it goes to trust, which Rama mentioned earlier. I think if we can, through the use of digital tools such as building information modeling, use and pass between us better quality information, that can lead to a great number of benefits. First of all, transparency in procurement, which, as we know, is an issue. It eats away at the investment that's being made. It degrades the trust in the sector as well, which slows things down. We've seen real examples of how digital has been introduced into a country in Latin America, where it reduced the time frame for procurement from over 12 months to around 3 months. So this is a very significant effect. Roland, you mentioned yourself that carbon is in fact the same as cost. So if we can reduce cost in our estimations by around 15%, we can also reduce carbon by a similar amount. I'll keep my remarks brief, but I would just like to pick up on Chairman Anar Guliev's comments about the sector being transformative. It is without doubt, in my mind, that in order to improve the sector, in order to support the climate goals we have, we need to modernize the sector that builds all of our infrastructure. It's such an important sector. It is quite laggard. It's a very traditional sector. And I believe that together, by mainstreaming digital, we can improve the sector and achieve the climate goals. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Adam, for going full circle and bringing us back to the original point. I was just trying to bring the red thread across everything we've just heard. And I think we started with the importance of the digitalization and how it helps us create transparency. Transparency gives us information, better information, which gives us better projects. And those better projects are lower risk. And hence, because they are lower risk, we're going to accelerate them, we're going to scale them, and we actually can create the impact that we need to do. So thank you very much for those excellent remarks. I think at this point, I just want to close by saying this transformation needs all of us. We are here, business, finance, governments. I'm sitting between Yves-Laurent Sapoval, my fellow co-chair in the Global Alliance, and Gulnara Roll, who heads the Secretariat. If you're not yet part of Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, you may want to consider to work with us. And I would just like in closing to quote our slogan for this year from our wonderful colleagues at the World GBC: be bold on buildings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for this. It was really very useful panel because we really moved from discussion of NDC and looking how they can be investable, clear and investable. And now we're going to a very important part of our high-level ministerial roundtable, which is named Strengthening Intergovernmental Cooperation for Green and Climate-Resilient Buildings. It will feature a statement from the national government sharing the experience in decarbonizing the building sector. And the session is also inaugurates the Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate, which is established under the Chaillot Declaration and which was signed by over the 60 countries. And with this, I would like to give floor to the chair of Intergovernmental Council for Building and Climate, Yves-Laurent Sapoval, who is a ministerial delegate for sustainable cities and urban envoy at the Ministry of Territories, Ecology and Housing in France.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the Presidency for organizing this important meeting and making space for the launch of this ministerial level Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate. I specifically want to thank for the organization and so many things the very efficient and reliable UNEP Secretariat of Global EBC and all the initiatives. With 37% of global CO2 emissions, the building sector is a climate heavyweight, as mentioned by the Mitigation Working Party. Also, it is highly exposed to climate change and it needs massive adaptation measures. With real estate being 60% of the global wealth, the building sector is 11 to 13% of the global GDP. It is a major economic actor, but moreover, building has tremendous social and cultural impact. It is where we live, learn, and work. It was during a long time the elephant in the room in the climate process. And for very understandable reasons. No sector implicates such a number of essential partners all along the value chain. Material providers, architects, engineers, users, developers, financiers, investors, the list is long, all of them strongly involved all along the value chain. We know it is a strongly hard to abate sector. But when we see the numbers and the current trend, we have no choice but to take action urgently. This is why France supported the creation of Global EBC at COP21, a global platform now gathering more than 290 stakeholders, all engaged under a common statement. This is why we launched with Morocco. The Buildings Breakthrough at COP29 for 29 front-running countries supported by 19 global initiatives. This is why we organized the first global forum on buildings and climate in March this year, gathering more than 50 ministerial delegations with more than 1,000 partners from all the world and all across the value chain. The major outcome of this forum is the Déclaration de Chaillot, supported by 64 governments and the European Commission. It is the first document addressing specifically the buildings and climate question. We now have common principles and common engagements. We needed to institute this mutual collaboration and to give it the political framework for follow-up and implementation. This is what we're doing today. As France chairing the first year, our objectives are simple. Extend the number of countries supporting, give the ICBC adapted rules, means, and priorities. For us, it should be finance. But we will listen to all the participating countries' needs and expectations. To achieve this, we will not be left alone. We will rely on our two Troika colleagues. At this regard, we specifically want to thank Brazil and Kenya for their enthusiastic involvement. As I thank the countries globally supporting the process since the beginning, Germany, United Arab Emirates, Canada, Switzerland, Morocco, United Kingdom, and lots of others. Allow me also to express my gratitude to all the private and NGOs partners and stakeholders involved in that process, many of them being in the room or at the building and cooling pavilion. Your constant support is key at any step of the journey. We still need to make the case for buildings. We need to recognize the mitigation potential of the sector. We have work to do. We will rely on all of you to keep this momentum and to push this heavy needle as fast and far as our future deserves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yves Laurent, the chair of the ICBC, and also we are very happy to see here also the two vice chairs, Brazil and Kenya, for the ICBC as well. We have a very short session about expression of support and expressing the country's experience with decarbonization. This is why we would be very grateful if you keep next interventions very short, to 2-3 minutes maximum. Also, we would like to apologize that we will not be taking all the ministers in the alphabetical order because some of the ministers have to go to the negotiations. We have a list of registered speakers, and we will be also having some of the speakers in addition. My apologies in advance if we will not be able to accommodate all the requested speakers because the next session will be starting at 1 p.m. So this put limitation to the session, but please be assured that at the next meetings, we will organize larger meetings and allow everybody to speak and to engage with everybody in this cooperation, which is the most important. With this, I would like to give floor to the United Kingdom, Rachel Coote, UK Government Special Representative of Climate, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a pleasure to be here, and the UK is excited to be here at the first ever ministerial meeting of the ICBC. We believe this council has a vital role to play in facilitating government-to-government dialogue. Every country here today faces their own challenges in decarbonising buildings and evolving their new building stock. In Britain, we have the second oldest housing stock in Europe, with around a third built before the Second World War in the middle of the last century. Few of our homes are energy efficient, and there's nothing more poignant as we bring our nation forward to meet our 1.5 targets. In 2022, buildings accounted for around a third of our total emissions. Our net zero mission, therefore, depends on finding ways to bring these buildings into the 21st century. This is part of a global challenge, and we know that international collaboration based on the best possible insights will ultimately be the key to our success. So I'm pleased today to announce that the UK will be funding a global whole-life carbon tracker. This project will give us a much clearer global picture of the emissions coming out of the building sector, broken down by country. It will strengthen our understanding of the different contexts that we face and make sure that we are all promoting appropriate solutions, whether it's in retrofitting buildings or decarbonising construction materials. The results will form part of the updated global status report from the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, filling a critical gap in international buildings data. We're also continuing to build momentum through the Global Clean Power Alliance, as well as engaging with excellent initiatives such as the Buildings Breakthrough. And of course, we're proud to be members of this council. The Global Status Report showed that buildings were not on track to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. We're in the middle of a critical decade. This council must be used to provide political momentum to enable the objectives of the breakthrough of making net zero emission and resilient buildings the new normal by 2030. We recognise that none of this is straightforward, but we believe that around this table, from the private sector to governments who are leading, to all of the other stakeholders, we have a new and determined coalition that can lead action. So without further ado, congratulations to the Council for making it this far, and we look forward to being an active member of the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, UK. Next is Samoa, His Excellency Toe Sulu Sulu Cedric Schuster, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, Samoa.
Talofalava and greetings from Samoa. Samoa is a Pacific island, a small island developing state, recognizes the acceleration of climate change renders our buildings and infrastructure increasingly vulnerable to climate risk and hazards. The potential for loss and damage is significant, prompting our commitment to decarbonize the building sector and enhance climate resilience at national level. Samoa welcomes the global movement towards the decarbonization of buildings. We are dedicated to this cause through the implementation of mandatory national building codes and energy efficient standards, which includes provisions for greenhouse gas calculators and promote the use of low carbon, durable, and cost-effective construction materials, ensuring that our built environment aligns with the sustainability goals. Samoa's second NDC, submitted in July of 2021, outlines a comprehensive approach to reducing GHG emissions by 26% by 2030 compared to 2007 levels. This includes measures across multiple sectors such as energy, transport, waste management, agriculture, and marine. Our commitment to achieving 100% renewable energy for electricity generation by 2025, whilst challenging, is still being pursued, but at a pace that is commensurate with our existing capacity and availability of climate finance. At the national level, Samoa has issued a new goal of 70% of renewable energy use by 2031. In alignment with our NDC, Samoa has developed a long-term low-emission development strategy, 2022 to 2032, that focuses on transitioning to low-carbon technologies. Samoa embraces the decarbonization of buildings as a vital step towards sustainable development and climate resilience. However, we emphasize that achieving all these goals requires robust support in terms of access to financing, capacity building, and technology transfer. Through the Intergovernmental Council for Building and Climate, Samoa looks forward to enhancing intergovernmental collaborations towards meaningful actions that contribute to a greener future for all. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Samoa. United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Sheikh Nasser Majid Al Qasimi, Assistant Under-Secretary of Infrastructure Development and Transport, please.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to join you today in this meeting where we discuss our shared commitments and to decarbonize the buildings and construction sector and enhancing the climate resilience in our cities. This gathering is not just another event, but a vital platform to reaffirm our collective decarbonization projects, exchange best practices, and foster intergovernmental cooperation through the ICBC. In the United Arab Emirates, we believe that achieving a sustainable future starts with the clear and practical steps, and we have implemented numerous initiatives to support this goal. For example, we have established ambitious strategies such as the UAE Energy Strategy 2050 and the UAE Water Security Strategy 2036, which aim to enhance energy and water efficiency while ensuring the sustainability of resources for future generations. These strategies are not merely policy documents, but effective tools to guide us through sustainable urban development. Additionally, we have introduced the Greenhouse Loans Program, which enables citizens to invest in environmentally friendly homes, encouraging individuals to take part in the sustainability journey. Furthermore, we have expanded the use of solar energy in governmental buildings to enhance energy efficiency and reduce emissions. Under the National Demand Side Management Program, we are targeting a 51% reduction in energy consumption by 2050. We have also developed comprehensive national sustainability guidelines that cover sectors such as roads, buildings, housing, and maintenance. These guidelines ensure that all our projects align with our national environmental goals, focusing on waste management and the use of sustainable materials. Scientific research plays a key role in shaping our policies. For example, joint study with the New York University of Abu Dhabi have highlighted the risk posed by rising sea levels and their impact on coastal areas. These findings have helped us plan smarter, ensuring the resilience of our infrastructure while protecting our environmental and economic communities. Through the National Guide for Smart Constructions also, we ensure the adaptation of smart technologies in all future projects. Additionally, the 3D Digital Twin project enables us to improve cities planning and make our urban areas more sustainable and livable. At the regional level, we are proud to collaborate on the Arab Roadmap for Zero Emission Buildings, reflecting our shared commitment to the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. The challenges we face are global and cannot be tackled by any single country alone. By working together, we can achieve real and tangible progress. In conclusion, the United Arab Emirates reaffirms its commitment to advancing sustainability and supporting its international partners. Together, we can turn today's challenges into opportunities for success and build a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, UAE and Cambodia. His Excellency Yang Sofalet, Minister of Environment, please, floor is yours. Please keep the time to 3 minutes because we're going over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, very pleased to participate in the inaugurations of the ICBC today. Climate change is a severe threat to our well-being and a healthy planet. Human activities causing climate change and human influence is making extreme climate events, including heat wave, heavy rainfalls, and droughts, more frequent and severe. Cambodia is highly vulnerable to climate change. Despite the historically low contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, the Ministry of Environment has made good progress of setting climate change policy and recognizes the urgency of taking ambitious climate ambitions. At national level, Cambodia adopted updated NDC with a target to reduce the total greenhouse gas emission around 42% by 2030, covering all key sectors, including green buildings, green coat, and energy efficiency considerations. We also submitted to the UNFCCC in 2021 a long-term strategy for carbon neutrality with a target of 2050. Cambodia has recently adopted the operation manual for the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement on climate change. The inauguration of the green building concepts into Cambodia's construction sector will support Cambodia in accelerating the achievement of its goal of low-emission development and promoting resource efficiency. The Green City Strategy Plan Methodology 2016, Phnom Penh Sustainable City Strategic Plan 2018-2030, and Sustainable City Strategic Plan for 7 secondary cities 2020-2030 have been formulated. In conclusion, Cambodia delegation strongly support this inauguration of the Intergovernmental Committee for Building and Climates. I hope this ministerial roundtable meeting will bring us more ambition on climate actions, bringing us the solidarity for a green world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to give you announcements that we will need to leave the room in about 10 minutes. So just please keep your intervention into 2 minutes. So with this, I would like to give floor to His Excellency Simonas Gentvilas, Minister of Environment, Lithuania, and to prepare to Uganda.
Thank you. We all claimed that we'll be carbon neutral cities and governments in 26 years. This means that buildings and housing and new developments built today, they should already be fit for climate neutral governments and countries and so like. What Lithuania did recently, it looked for low-hanging fruits, meaning primary energy. Just in recent 15 years, we transferred from 10% of renewable energy sources in district heating sector to 80% currently. Government subsidies, half of price for heat pumps installed in private residence buildings and so on. But looking at the retrofitting of existing housing stocks, we have actually running for 20 years a very successful governmental program. We have retrofitted 1 out of 7 existing housing, multi-block housing units with external green finance institutions and banking sector. For the socially vulnerable, the government has paid all the retrofitting costs, meaning that they get it for free. But this is only for the current existing stock. For what concerns the new building codes, it's a big challenge for us as politicians. But we have brought in the new building code, which demands that the new buildings should be built only mostly as passive houses, with a lot of effort on CO2 negative construction materials. Actually, this year the government, through the public procurement, demands that the governmental buildings should be built at least out of 50% of CO2 negative materials. And this push makes the industry transfer in general, because the government buys half of material investments in the country. So government regulation is actually enforcing and can be a successful factory in further private sector. To finalize, the journey towards the green and resilient cities actually starts with the next building permit in your city. And you have a capacity to do more, and let's make this globally a political agenda and make it solution, not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lithuania. His Excellency Namuganza Persis Princess, State Minister for Land, Housing and Urban Development of Uganda.
Thank you, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all. Princess Namuganza is my name. I'm the Minister of State for Government of Uganda and a Member of Parliament. Uganda supports all the scientifically proven initiatives and corrective efforts geared at ensuring that the world achieves the net zero carbon emissions and keeps the global temperatures to below 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2030 to guarantee the global environmental and ecological balance, hence sustainability of humanity. Aware that construction and buildings are currently responsible for over 21% of global greenhouse gas emissions, 37% of energy-related carbon emissions, 34% of energy demand, and consume about half of the world's raw materials, there is therefore urgent call for action for safer and sustainable built environment. Furthermore, if status quo remains, buildings will be increasingly exposed to climate-related risks, which will be primarily and significantly affect the developing countries, Uganda inclusive. Housing and climate effects therefore need to be mitigated on time. Housing specifications, quality technology, and general supplies should be prioritized at this COP29 in Baku, and the future climate agenda to ensure adaptive and resilient smart cities that will accommodate generations ahead without compromising the environmental issues. To achieve this ambitious roadmap, sovereign states need to be honest with the issues at hand and offer solutions, especially technology and funding, without reservations. Exploitation of the existing natural resources must be undertaken in clear consideration of the environmental effects that impacts on the global population. You will be pleased to know that Uganda, as a hub for renewable energy, sits in a privileged position to harness the following: a green country, whereas the world is talking about green agenda, Uganda is all green and hence needs to be supported to keep the green, which is already absorbing the global emissions and supports flora and fauna, hence guaranteeing secure habitation and enhancing the tourism sector. In conclusion, Uganda takes note that housing is central to the green and climate agenda. We therefore call for provision and commitment of adequate funding that will drive green housing technology in low-developed countries. At this COP29, Uganda reiterates her commitment to, 1, supporting the national determined contributions in advancing policy implementation and investment in the buildings and construction sector, and 2, support the realization of the various international covenants, among them the Declaration in Kyoto on decarbonization of buildings and environment, resolutions of the World Urban Forum, the UN Green Housing and Climate Agenda for a carbon-free environment. We support the call to action for more resilient and sustainable cities through participatory and collective global innovations and interventions for God and my country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uganda. Her Excellency Yoko Alender, Minister of Climate, Estonia.
Thank you. Dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, 90% of biodiversity loss is traceable to material extraction, and out of that 50% by the building sector. So what a chance to make a change. We do need a mindset change from new build to renovation and creative reuse. The new European Bauhaus initiative is built on the values together, beautiful and sustainable. As an architect, I must also stress that everything we do in this field must be for a better living environment. So the majority of the existing European building stock comes from a time when we didn't have such requirements on energy performance. For example, in Estonia, half of the final energy consumption comes from the existing buildings. So we really need to maintain these, renovate and improve energy efficiency. Also, Estonia has committed to several national and EU level initiatives aimed at decarbonizing the building sector and enhancing climate resilience. When it comes to the retrofitting, we call it a renovation wave, and we support our people to renovate their homes. And we have found that the factory reconstruction is a success story, also using renewable, sustainable materials. It is innovative and more efficient for reconstructing buildings. It quickens the process, and also factory-produced insulation elements are installed directly to the building's facades, also making the process quicker and having considerably less disruptive for its residents. Approach also minimizes demolition waste by reusing existing structures, materials and infrastructure. And again, this reduces the demand for new raw materials and prevents large amounts of construction waste. We really believe in cooperation and know-how sharing. And added to the new Bauhaus project, Estonia has benefited from a strong cooperation with the Nordic countries. The Nordic Sustainable Construction Forum has shared with us its expertise in sustainable construction practices, including the life cycle assessment. And this collaboration has provided us with an opportunity to learn from true leaders. And as a result, we have applied this knowledge to new regulations. And starting from July 25, Estonia will require all new buildings over 1,000 square meters to calculate their carbon footprints. In this light, we are pleased that also the Chaillot Declaration that Estonia endorsed and the Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate will take the cooperation in the building sector between governments into a more concrete level. Sustainable solutions in the building sector need to increase the quality of wider surrounding living environment. It is for the people we build. Thank you.
Thank you, Estonia. Mr. Maurice Akesh, Executive Director, National Construction Authority, Kenya.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Distinguished guests, Excellencies, I'm from Kenya, representing the Deputy Minister. But beyond that, I'm happy to note that what we're discussing today, I was part of the witness in France, Paris, in March. So I'm very much in line with what I'm here to present to you. As a country, and we're also happy to have space in the global scene in terms of being deputizing the chair from France. So as a country, some of the best practices we see in enhancing this collaboration, this ICBC, is one, let's have very clear measurable objectives that align with both national and collective global climate goals. And let's also ensure that those goals enable us to have shared vision that facilitates all us working collectively towards a common goal. We also need to purpose to have a platform for knowledge sharing among member states. Thirdly, we also need to purpose to raise our membership subscription to have at least all the members of UNFCCC join this very important ICBC, which focuses on buildings and climate. And number 4, we also need to work together to develop collaborative policy frameworks that support sustainable building practices across borders. This should be done by harmonizing regulations, such as building codes, where they align, because we may have different conditions. We also need to reduce barriers to cooperation and create a more cohesive approach to ICB or CB objectives. And on that front, lastly, we need to adopt a model of continually engaging our stakeholders, including national non-governmental organizations, community groups, private sector, and as well as establishing advisory committees on forums that will include diverse stakeholders to engage. How do we see ICBC support Kenya's efforts in building decarbonization and resilience? One, Kenya is currently implementing a new building code. This calls for invitation of partners across the room to support the implementation of the code that has embedded in itself issues that deal with the green building construction. And this is part of a policy reform that the country has undertaken. I'm happy to note this particular building code was gazetted the same day ICBC was signed in France. It was a very good coincidence. And later in July, it was launched and effective. It's becoming effective in March next year. Lastly, Kenya is developing long-term strategies for 2050 to align with UNFCCC requirement on innovation and adoption of sustainable practices in various sectors, including building and construction. And lastly, building and construction sector decarbonization roadmap as a special purpose pathways to spur economic impact and growth pathways, as well as guide investment in our sector. That is our submission from Kenya. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kenya. The last speaker in this panel, Mr. Cipullo, who is an energy expert advisor to Italian Minister of Environment and Energy Security. This will be the last intervention in this panel.
Thank you very much, and I will be brief. I appreciate, of course, your time as well. Joining the thanking remarks, all the parties, we reiterate that Italy is very active in the council created as a result of the Declaration de Chaillot. So we're very grateful for that. We already put forward some priorities regarding this topic, namely the need for tax mechanisms, innovative solutions for financing of energy renovations as well. And I'm very proud to underline the landmark legislation around energy communities that we passed a few months ago. The role of public administrations and green public procurement is another very important step. Circular economy in the urban area, and of course construction, building, and the technical planning and design solution to reduce building consumption, recognizing that of course energy efficiency is the first fuel. Italy is also very much involved in developing nature-based solution on top of energy implementation. This is a very important element, and as I underlined earlier, again, green public procurement also as a role model towards the residential buildings as well. And I'll finish here. Thank you very much for this and for all the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We would like to ask for conclusions from Ambassador Antonio da Costa e Silva, who is the Chief International Advisor, Minister of Cities, and Vice Chair of the ICBC Brazil. And then we would be very grateful if Mr. Guliev also would close this meeting.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, tell you that we are really looking forward to build an agenda around ICBC for Belém that actually responds to a number of issues that has been raised during this roundtable today. I particularly appreciate a number of points made by my colleague from Kenya. I think there was, Yves Laurent said that finance was his priority, and I did take note of the point made by one of the private sector participants of the mutually reinforcing dependency, maybe, between finance and the building sector. For Brazil, while building sector has a very limited contribution in terms of our emissions, we've been looking into how we will tackle the issue, bearing in mind a number of characteristics that I believe are common to developing countries. And we hope to put those in the agenda also for next year in Belém. First and foremost, the fact that a significant part of our construction sector is self-built and is in the peripheries. And so the issue is how do you bring in new standards for the self-built informal sector of construction is one issue that I think we share with other developing countries. The second is that in Brazil, and I believe we are not unique in that, most building regulations are locally issued by municipalities, and therefore engaging local governments is also a significant part of what we need to do. So what we're trying to do is actually stimulating this debate by issuing decarbonized standards for social housing program that we have is a significant and important program which wants to tackle the still significant gap in terms of housing that we have in the country. It is calculated that about 6 million houses is still needed, and we hope to respond during this mandate of President Lula with about 2 million of those. So we're hoping to stimulate standards of decarbonization, materials, a number of other standards in that. What we have found is that the most significant problem that we have is on waste management from the construction sector. So that is one issue that certainly we would welcome if we could address. We are hoping to develop with the Secretariat, UNEP, and with our two co-chairs, Kenya and France, a program of work that will bring us to Belém with a more significant body of knowledge, data, and inputs that might allow us to have a more constructive and forward-looking discussion. I hope that I will be able to help in that conversation with both UNEP, France, and Kenya, so that when we get to Belém, we will sit in a ministerial which will have hopefully, three characteristics, and I will conclude with that. A significant more number of members to ICBC, and Brazil will engage with each and every one of our international partners to see how we can convince them to join us, because I think there it's a shared goal. The second is, how do we build, in the context of the call, I think it's the Secretary General's Pact for the Future adopted at the UN this September had alliances as one of the objectives. So how do we build alliances with other alliances that reinforce what we're trying to do here? I think ICBC has a lot of commonalities with other alliances around the international community, and maybe a conversation among those would tackle issues that are relevant. Just to give you one example, we are confronting globally, it's not just anymore an issue of the global south, is also an issue of the global north, a housing deficit that we will need to address, while at the same time we are confronting a complete change in the needs of the business sector building environment. And so those two discussions need to be held. And last but not least, the issue of how do we address the informal sector of the building environment, which is significant, particularly in the global south. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you all in significant more numbers in Belém do Pará.
Thank you so much, Brazil. Before giving back to Azerbaijan for closing, just two announcements. So following the closing, we will do the family picture of the speakers and heads of delegation here in front. And secondly, the second roundtable on the urban nature and urban agriculture will be here starting in 7 minutes. Mr. Chairman, please.
Thank you very much. Considering time pressure, I will not take much of your time. Just want to thank again to all of you. I believe it is very successful high-level ministerial meeting, which still continue. We're about to finish one of two parallel roundtables. There is one more going right now in another room on transport, and two more will start in a few minutes. A lot of interesting inputs were given today by all of you. So I believe together we can easily and within a short period of time make sure that, as it was already mentioned today, make sure that we will not only count cost of construction, but also carbon emission in advance, and we'll make sure that it will go closer to zero as soon as possible. MAP initiative, which was announced today, provide good opportunity to structure this work, plus Baku Continuity Coalition, which was established today, also going to make sure that all these discussions, all these ideas will turn into action plans on both national and local levels in all of our countries. And we, considering that going to host WUF 13, will do our best, continue doing our best next year and a half in order to proudly share all of our joint achievements. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for your support and organization. As this meeting is adjourned, and would like to have the family photo here in front.